I'm glad you mentioned
Oop,
I'm glad you
sorry.
mentioned police and firefighters there, Francis. We're looking out across the exhibit hall. There's a CERT emergency or operational support vehicle inside the hall. I'm not sure how it got here. I don't want to know how it got here. It's very cool to look at. There's lots of flashing lights. But talk to us about drones. We see a lot of first responders and search and rescue struggle with this. We have this great new technology,
Yeah.
but first responders aren't necessarily IT and data and equipment experts. And I know you have done a lot of work with search and rescue and helping in those areas.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of search and rescue, I think if we go back about 5 years ago now, we have equipped all of the major search and rescue teams that are federally mandated by equipping them with base camp units. So they all have two units, one for deployment and one for backup. So Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal are the first ones to have been trained on these units. Now, when we talked with them 5 years ago, again, technology goes very fast, and we were talking about integrating new stuff and referring back to Vancouver HUSAR, so TF1 or is it TF2? I don't remember. They have so one of the things that they have come up with is a tablet that will look, let's say, in a rubble, right? So a building goes down and there's rubble, and they will go there. Since it's an unstable environment, what they will do is take that video feed back to where the team is located in a safer environment, and they're doing that with a Wi-Fi directional antenna. So that was new to me. I didn't know that existed. But it extends the range of Wi-Fi, but in a very linear point-to-point way. What this allows them to do is to have a video feed and talk between themselves about what's the best way to go in what remains of the building and trying to find, missing persons if they are. Um, that was kind of initially, we weren't talking about drones at that time, but that's one of the tools that they had. The drone is for us exactly the same thing. It's an IP address, right? Like your
Correct.
computer has an IP address and you're connected to a network. We are taking that as an additional tool to help search and rescue operators do their job. Um, I think the closest example that we have and that we've been talking about is with Burlington Fire. So Burlington Fire, and I'm talking about Burlington, Ontario, in Toronto, right? Not Burlington in the States. So Burlington are using a drone with an infrared sensor to determine on top of the building. And the example they gave me was a mall. So there was a fire in the roof of a mall, and there's a danger effect to taking a firefighter and going on site to see what's going on and where the hotspot is. Doing it with a drone is another way to do it, but it's a much safer way to do it because, of course, you're up in the air. You
Mhm.
could see where the hotspot is, and it greatly reduces the risk of deploying your team because now you know where you're going to go in through the building, how you're going to, put water in the building or whatever agent you want to put in there, and what will be your intervention plan. And that really is a new tool for an intervention plan. The police might be a little bit different, but think about highway patrol and a crash involving multiple vehicles. They might be able to deploy a drone on site and see what the wreckage looks like before they can actually be on site just because of traffic, right? So carnage happens on the 401 at 8 in the morning. It's not long that you're going to get stuck in traffic. And even though you have sirens and lights and everything going on, you might be impeded to go on site. So deploying a drone might be a very effective way to help you and build your plan.
So it helps manage resources too, because using your example, if you see an accident on the 401, you can determine ahead of time, I don't need 4 or 5 responders. I only need one. That kind of
Exactly.
thing, right?
And you can always, you can already decide how many tow trucks you need to be on site. and what type of tow trucks. Is it a semi that's on the side of the road? Is it just a couple of cars? That can help you greatly into evaluating what the danger is to get on site, and what the intervention plan is once you're going to get there, for sure.
These are all very interesting applications for first responders and incident management. But how do we, if I'm a firefighter and my station, my department now has a drone, how do we effectively train people so that they can use this equipment and this technology?
Yeah, and I'm sure that at the show today, there's a few drone companies that can explain everything that they do. But what we've been seeing, because we work with a lot of them, and it does happen that the drone companies call us to better understand how they can integrate their drone feed. And it's usually a camera feed that you're getting with a drone.
Yeah.
How do they incorporate that into something else, and how did they get that drone feed, the video feedback, out to another location, whether it's headquarters, whether it's an emergency operations center. There's ways to do it, and we are the vehicle that allows that to happen. But the drone is something specific, because you need someone to fly the drone, right? And you need a license to do that. Otherwise, an emergency happens.
You need a license?
Yes.
But how come you can buy them off of Amazon and people buy them off of Amazon?
Yeah.
And I know a couple of people who have bought them off of Amazon and don't have licenses. So
Yes.
can you talk about that?
Yeah, so there's training to operate a drone for public safety, specifically. The drone companies will either lend you, rent you, or sell you a drone, but they're also going to give you the training on how to operate it and how to fly it, right?
Okay.
Because you get to a site, you have an emergency vehicle. Let's say that you have a command vehicle that's normally where we stand. We have a command vehicle, and it's decked out with our stuff. And then you have a drone inside that's sitting in a box. So you can't take the first person out and say, "Hey, take that drone and put it up in the air." Right? It doesn't happen that way.
You would not want me doing that. No.
No, exactly. And then you have, for example, drone operators who will operate within the vicinity of an airport. So there's regulation. There's a certain framework that's around it, and you need to have someone who knows how to operate the drone, who knows what, for example, the battery lifetime is, to make sure that you're not, an hour and a half circling around a certain location, and then the drone drops. There's things with a home button, for example, that exists. You need to know how to do these things, because the home button, if you haven't set it up properly, once the drone gets out of battery, aside from, instead of coming back to you at the location where you are, if you haven't set up properly, it's going to go back to HQ all the way out. Right. And if it crosses an airport doing that, it's going to do it. You just gave them the indication to go back home, to go back to base. So there are things that you really need to take care of. There's also a legal factor that's involved. And you're right. There's drones that are operated by amateurs, right? I could operate a drone over the weekend to take snapshots of my house.
Yeah.
But if you do this in a legal context with a police deployment, for example, you deploy an amateur drone out there, it's not only that they're not going to like it, you might have some legal implication there. You are not allowed to do things like that. So there are things, and there are frameworks, just like flying an airplane or a helicopter, using a drone specifically for public safety intervention. So there are a set of rules that you need to follow, for sure.
Francis, earlier you mentioned, these people using directional Wi-Fi, and it got me thinking about search and rescue. When we do search and rescue in remote areas, the communication tools and systems that we would use here in Toronto are not the same. So what are you seeing some organizations do for that?
So we're looking at it maybe more as a broad perspective, because search and rescue, especially in Canada, there's really two entities for search and rescues. There's normally it's the larger cities that have the search and rescue group, and that falls under the fire department. So even though they have more of a separate or additional training and additional gear for search and rescue, it's still part of the fire department. It's true for all the cities I mentioned before. Um, Now, there's also a second layer, and that is defense. Uh, and true in Canada, so the Canadian Reserve will deploy during natural disasters. They did during the Alberta wildfires. They did in Gatineau last year during the floods. They do that year in, year out. And their specific goal is to deploy with kids to help public safety and connect everybody together while the infrastructure is either down, has been knocked out, or is not working. So we're really looking this as a broader perspective of how do we connect all of those people together, and how do we make sure that they have very different systems, but we're still able, at an ad hoc scenario, to connect all of them together for a temporary time, whether it's an hour, a day, a week, a month, and then disconnect everyone so that they can all go on and go about their business once it's not needed. So that's really the way that we're looking at it. So everything that we're looking at in terms of newer technologies, right? Newer radio systems, integration with radio and LTE, radio over IP, and all those new technologies. We're looking at that as an integration perspective of how can we enhance what we have using these new technologies, and still keep the filter of having something that's very, very simple as an interface for the user. And we have two users group. We sell to defense, also to international really defense deployments, and that's a complete different ball game. But when we talk about disaster response, it's always simplicity, ease of use, and ease of connectivity between all the different actors together. So if I piggyback on the radio over IP, for example, that has allowed us to have apps that you can have on your phones, on tablets, on PCs, and once it's set up properly, you could have someone using their cell phone actually talk to someone who is using a radio. So let's put this into context. And going back into some examples, if there's a large event happening downtown Toronto and the firefighters are deployed and search and rescue teams are deployed within the fire department, and they need to go into a building, that has other implications, because normally the media is going to be there quite quickly. And you will also need non-intervention people to be aware of what's going on. City Hall, for example, public safety and City Hall, Ontario might be involved at one point. So there's all those different organizations coming together. Now, you probably don't want the mayor to be on site at the intervention scene, especially not at the beginning, because they're organizing, they're doing the job. However, you want a link to that person, and that link might not be available being a phone line. So you're going to have the radio over IP features, whether it's a fixed setup that it's somewhere in a server in the city that can link up phone systems to radios, or it's an ad hoc potential, like being deployed on site and then reaching out to the mayor to give an assessment of what's going on.
Ease of connectivity. You mentioned ease of connectivity. Yeah. That is a topic near and dear to my heart. After this morning, we've had all kinds of connectivity fun times. So, Francis, we know you're a busy man. We want to let you go. If people want to learn more, where can they find you, or where can they find Basecamp Connect?
Well, the website, of course, is one of the first places to go and look at. The products, the markets that we serve, everything's there. We have a lot more. We have case studies, what to think about when you have you want to buy a mobile command unit, for example. that's one of the things that we provide. Of course, we have customers around Canada and more specifically in the Toronto area. So without citing everyone, we mentioned Toronto, the city of Vaughan, Burlington, St. Catharines. We have Niagara. We have, I think one of the first one was the city of Guelph. So shout out to all the folks
Hey,
at Guelph if they're
That's
listening.
where I live.
Yeah, so John Green and his team on the IT department. We are physically on site at the booth, number 5, I think, in the
You are-
premium booth at the show.
We can see you over there.
Yep.
And he's waving to
He's
us.
waving,
Yeah,
yes.
there you go. So my buddy Francois is there,
Yeah.
and he's got one of the new kits that we have that we're presenting at the show. So we're and then of course we're always happy to have a call, a video chat, a demo to anyone who wants to know more. It's free, doesn't cost anything, and you know there's long cycles of selling our products within the community. So when you call us, we don't bug you every month to figure out, hey, when are you going to buy this? You know, sometimes it takes 3 years until it happens. So we're very helpful with the customers.
All right. So for our audience, if you're on site today, Francois is in booth 5. Every time I say his name, his eyes go wide in terror. You can also find
Just like that. Yeah,
just
just like that.
right
Yeah.
now. And they can also, you can find Francis and his team at basecampconnect.com. Francis, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
And a thanks to Melanie for helping set this up for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. She's behind. You can't see her, but she's behind me. I'll tell you.
She's listening just around the corner,
Right around
right?
the
She
corner.
always listens to what I do.
All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, Francis.
Thank you, sir. Have
And
a great day.
drive safe with all that snow.
Yes, thank you. Likewise.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.